when I should have left myself alone. But I couldn't have, oh no, I couldn't have. I always open my gut when I shouldn't have, oh no, I shouldn't have.
Okay.
My man, thank you so much. Like we were saying, 90-hour weeks to slot in talking with a stranger on the internet is a bloody privilege. So thank you, sir.
My pleasure, man. Stoked.
First of all, we're gonna have to jump into that, mainly out of my own curiosity of how do you juggle all the time, many different athletes doing many different things, then family, then business, and then also like keeping yourself somewhat level. How do you juggle all that, man?
Sorry, I just cut just a little bit there. Just managing all the pieces all like through the week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at it for 15 years now. This will be 15 years of Squamish Barbell coming up in October. And it's frog in hot water. You turn the temperature up slow enough, no one notices.
So you certainly can't jump into something like that, right? Like people coming out of PT school or coming out of the diploma or out of college. It's not like, okay, let's just start working all hours of the day. We've got to slowly turn up that intensity, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it'd be a lot. It'd be a lot otherwise. I mean, it feels like a lot. Like even with the years of experience and so on and so forth, you feel it. Yeah.
Now, something that I've been meaning to ask you is more around a training philosophy, right? Like, where do you go mentally when you're constructing, whether it's a program for an individual or for a wide variety of athletes? Where does your mind take you to be able to create those types of programs?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, yeah, diverse group of athletes, right? So I guess the piece is collecting the information and and talking with the athlete. You don't have to sort of, and not really having like preconceived pieces, like things where I'm going to try to slot them into a category. I kind of want to meet the person. So my favorite thing to do is be able to sit down and chat with the person individually and just start asking questions, even if I don't necessarily know all the questions that I'm going to ask, but start just a conversation and get that going and start to get a feel for where the athlete might have strengths and weaknesses, if that's going to be a good fit. I mean, there's so many elements and factors that are kind of like go, no go pieces, and being able to move forward with an athlete, even past that initial meeting, is just, some of it is just a feeling of, am I going to be able to be of use to this person? Am I going to be helpful and effective in what we're going to do? Because I mean, I really don't want to take anyone on who I don't feel confident about being able to have a positive effect. And I mean, honestly, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You don't have to work with all of them. So just making sure the match is good and it's going to be a good sort of collaboration between the athlete and the coach. And then starting to just ask questions. How long have they been training for, where they're at, what they're currently doing, where their numbers are at. I mean, all that stuff starts to paint a picture of what I might be able to do to be helpful. So I just try to keep an open mind and treat everyone like an individual. I don't sort of think, oh, this person's kind of the same as this person, and then they'll end up here. And then really, I mean, I try to create pretty individualized plans for the people that I work one-on-one with. And then even our gym, I mean, location, country you're from, all these sort of elements are small factors that actually do have an effect on training and culture and all those sort of pieces, and just trying to get a handle on what works and then starting somewhere. It's over time with experience with athletes that you kind of can know where about you're going to start, and then starting and moving forward and just being willing to recognize when you're not quite there, or you need to make a minor change, or and you just try to fine tune, and then eventually, as time goes on, if you continue to work with that athlete, it gets pretty buttoned up, or that team. I mean, sometimes I'm just one person of a larger puzzle of coaches that fit together to try to get an athlete to, a national level or Olympic level, or CrossFit Games, all those sort of things.
I love that answer, mate, of asking questions. Like, I like to dissect the minds of coaches, mainly because I think it's a fascinating place. It's like the mad scientist with hair everywhere and electricity going everywhere, and a mild caffeine addiction, to say the least. And
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, figure out
you
what'll
know,
kill you for caffeine and back it off a couple of milligrams.
yeah, maybe half a cup.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's like, oh, make sure the athletes are sleeping 8, 9, 10 hours. Yeah. How many are you sleeping? Don't ask me that question. We're kind of motoring on. And
Yeah, totally.
I see it as this kind of like crazy artist, of like Vincent van Gogh, of like, I've lost my mind to this art form, and in the process I found myself. I see coaching
Yeah.
in the same realm, right? I see it as just this kind of masterpiece that we're all just fine tuning, and from asking each other, seeing the athletes, talking to them, seeing GPP, figuring out for ourselves. We're almost all got a paintbrush trying to figure out this picture. And I see it as such a beautiful
Yeah.
thing of like, we need to understand what the fuck is going on with this individual in front of us, right? Like, quite often we like to sit back and come up with a logical answer, and we forget that we're not working with logical things. We are irrational beings, emotional, it's all left, right, and center. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. My plan can now just go into the toilet because we need to now
Yeah.
figure it out. And I find it frustrating, definitely, but really addictive. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that self-inflicted suffering. It's like, oh fuck, I've not quite got it again. But communicating with the individual in front of you, the team, the people around, messing with different ideas, and then also like yourself, right? Like, whether you fucking train in whatever capacity, I
Yeah.
find it so addictive and beautiful. And it's just this art form that ever evolves. Science comes out with new things, and we're like, okay, cool. Everything we were doing is now proven wrong. We now need to go back to the drawing board. And it's fascinating. It's this intersection between like the lab and like real time, right? We're like kind of slapped in the middle. Was like, how do we kind of dissect this information that all the clever people are giving us, but also
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the individuals that, if they weren't a professional athlete, they would probably be in jail. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how do we then create this kind of bridge between? And I find it
Yeah, you're
fascinating.
on the front line in the trenches.
In the
Trying
trenches.
to
Yeah.
trying to take information from people making decisions, or giving advice and direction from boardrooms far away, and
Mm.
try to take that and apply it as effectively as possible to accomplish the task at hand. Like, and the needle's always being moved, and competitions change, rules change, weight classes change,
Yeah.
and how countries are coaches adapt to those things make a big difference. I mean, sports come and go from the Olympics. The And that opens doors and closes doors, and those sort of things are always, yeah, it's captivating. It's, I mean, super interesting. I have no complaints about the volume of work that I accomplish on any given week, or the opportunity to work with the people that I do. I mean, it is exactly that. It's like the challenge of it is captivating. I mean, and across the board, I mean, I still do intakes with people here and there for the gym, right? I'm happy to work with a brand new person on day one, because it's just sometimes really fun to have someone introducing basic patterns, and
Yeah.
their very first experience or very first hour in the gym. It's pretty cool to still have that opportunity, and I'm super fired up to do that too. But I mean, I think as a coach, it's nice to have a couple. I mean, you need some outliers and some really high performers to make you more uncomfortable, so that
Mm.
you're put in a spot where you have to evolve and adapt, um, and change your programming, and to be able to move the athlete continually forward. I mean, I don't expect to keep my job on any team that I'm part of if I can't continue to produce results. I mean, I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to. So because of that, I mean, you're always trying to stay ahead, and um, make the best choices. to see that person to the greatest possible success.
Agreed. You got to be judged by the efficacy of it, right? It's just like,
Yeah,
did it fucking work at the end of the day? Like, and
totally.
is it
Yeah.
working with that individual? And if the answer is yes, like that's not a guarantee that it's going to be
Hmm.
yes for everybody else or the other team or even the next season for the same person. You know, we've always got to go back to that
No, even
drawing
the
board.
next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it might work for 3 weeks, and you're like, man, that was really awesome. You're like, but you know, where are you going to next, right? Like
Mm,
we generally anything we're building in for strength programming might be 3 weeks of a cycle, and so because of
yeah.
that, I mean, that might feed to another cycle, but also might require a big shift in gears depending on what events coming up or where that athlete's showing their strengths and weaknesses, how that's changed and evolved. I mean, Louis was always you create a strength, you create a weakness.
Yep.
So you're the strength, you can't continue to build strengths and capitalize on them. You capitalize on them is exactly what you want to do, but you can't continue to build just those strengths. I mean, you got to be very careful that you're offsetting that new strength with for being able to foresee what that weakness it's creating is, and then being
Mm,
able to compensate or have an answer for that as well. I mean, this is where, especially with outdoor sports, I mean, those outdoor sports where the season goes on and you build these very specific muscle groups for these very specific sports, and that's where like mid late season they're technically competent and ready to go, super fired up, feeling really good, built success on success through the season, but they've also created imbalances, and now those imbalances come to like
yeah.
fruition kind of when you really don't want them to. So trying to anticipate those things and stay ahead of them so you're not chasing. Yeah, I mean it's fucking awesome. It's great. It's a great job.
How do you go about identifying those things to be able to prevent rather than react later on down the line?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's experience, for sure, but some of it is having a diverse program. Like the diversity of the patterns we choose for an athlete to use and work with. Sometimes, I mean, you don't see those um, weaknesses in what they're up to if you keep the programming exactly the same. So we try to introduce new patterns like each sort of cycle or each year. I mean, Justin, who we started working together. I mean, I think the fall of 2020.
Mm,
I mean, we just started working with chains as accommodating resistance for him in this last sort of like season,
mm,
and that's a brand new piece, and it's just been sitting there, which we haven't bothered to pull off the shelf and utilize. And we're always looking at what Rogue's got coming out and pulling those pieces down, because sometimes what happens is you do something with an athlete and it's a surprise. It's a surprise to you, and you're like, whoa, they're way off the mark. So if you have like a broad set of metrics where like, oh, this athlete is relatively here for these things, and this should be this, and this should be that. When you see something that suddenly is off that mark, that's foreshadowing of
yeah.
where they're going to have problems. So I mean, optimally, what we're looking for in the gym is that chance to find gaps and weaknesses in a controlled environment rather than them finding that out, like, I mean, on the field of battle, right? I
Yeah.
mean, when it happens in a dynamic environment like sport, you know it sometimes it doesn't work out super well. So if we can
Mm,
find those things in the gym and be like, oh wow, that's totally far. I mean, that's why it's worth always having training partners, because if you know where you
yep.
stack up with your training partners, and if I'm always ahead of my training partner by 10 pounds on bench press movements, and suddenly something comes up and he beats me by 20 pounds, and I mean, they're like, was I sick? Is it a mechanical disadvantage? Whatever. There's a bunch of questions you have to double check and ask. But if those answers are like, no, I felt great, everything else, he beat me on that fair and square, then you're like, okay, well, what's the answer to that then for where that weakness lies? And
Mm,
sometimes that unlocks things. You're like, oh man, I use this pattern to identify this weakness, and then chase down that weakness and the following 6 to 12 weeks. Or I mean, sometimes if it's a big hole, especially with new people, it can be like 6 months.
mm.
Um, but you close that gap and suddenly like, oh, back to where I should be. Like, back to being able to retest that and be like, yeah, I beat him by 10 pounds.
Yeah, it's also dealing with the fear factor from the athlete as well, right? When you're like, hey, we got to
Mm-hmm.
strip this down. We found a massive hole. It's like, but if we don't keep beating this drum, it's going to like fade away. Right. I just think back to the old school weight room in the days in the rugby training. Right. It was just like, no, we
Yeah.
have to hit the fucking heavy lifts every time. Then we're outside and we're on the scrum machine. And that's kind of it. Come
Yeah.
game day, and then we're going to get in a scrap. And you're just like, guys, we can't just continuously do one thing. Like
No.
it's not going to
Yeah.
happen. It's not going to work. We can't linearly progress. Otherwise, we'd all be fucking deadlifting 500 kilos, like
Totally.
the 501 and the 500 would be something that we're just like, it's just another Tuesday. We have to be able to mix things up, expose ourselves to different stimuli. That does actually slap us with a bit of humble pie and be like, oh shit, I have got a massive hole here, to prevent that, fingers crossed, prevent that injury, prevent that loss, whatever it is, further on down the line, trying to get a little bit more longevity out of the athlete. Plus, it's fun too, right?
Totally.
It keeps them mentally stimulated.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
here's
Yeah,
something
fresh.
new. Like it's a new skill. Learn this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best program ever isn't very valuable if it's not executed on. Like if the athlete doesn't have the drive or motivation to do the work, I mean, as good as you can program, if they don't do it with all of the, from their side, if they don't bring it to those sessions,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. And you're better off to have a program that's 50% as good, but the athlete is very excited about. So it's also trying to find that balance of what they're willing to do, what they're not really willing to do, how motivated they feel by those things. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, testing stuff. We're on a funny um, deadlift cycle right now that, I mean, I spent some time thinking about it. I was like, man, I'm really curious to sort of see how this goes. And I mean, anytime you try to bring something really kind of like new in, you got to be very careful and be like, is this irresponsible? I mean, you
Yeah.
can make some mechanical changes that really exposes athletes to injuries. And you have to be super careful. But we've been pulling deadlifts with, we've done it sort of 3 weeks. So we pull like a 1 rep max deadlift variation about every third week. So we'll do 2 squat max variations and then a deadlift max variation. But this is the first time we've ever cycled it where we're showing a progression through the series. So over the course of like, week 0, 3, and 6, that deadlift's connected to the prior one in some way. But we're actually pulling with squat bars. So you've got an oversized grip in the hand. So you got 32 millimeter bar instead of a 27 millimeter deadlift bar, or 28 and a half for a power bar. So you got an oversized, thicker bar, but it is stiff. Like that bar gives up nothing at all. And so you've got to be really good about being able to get everything you can out of it and then be super patient in that initial part of the pull. And then our progression is a descending range of motion. So we started at like as a block pull, 1.5 inches, and then we've dropped to 1 inch for week 2, and we'll drop to a 1/2 inch for week 3. And after week 3, we'll evaluate like what we want to do next. But it's an interesting piece to sort of see like, what's going to come out of this. And it's been very interesting to watch athletes do it, because there's a real piece of, I mean, the nice thing about the thickness of the bar is it's stopping an athlete from going, like the grip will become a factor for some more than others, but it kind of prevents a really maximal lift where everything's been optimized, right? Like when you start talking about like using a kabuki bar, because that's got so much whip and bend to it, it really promotes like, that athlete being able to like pull and like build that start position, versus like with these, I mean, you see who's patient and who's not, and who's willing to put their body under a tremendous amount of tension and have it barely move and then get through that mud and have that bar start to move. And so it gives you like really valuable information about some athletes. It may not prove to be valuable for all the athletes, but individuals, there might be stuff where like, oh man, that person really doesn't have the grind in them, or that
Yeah.
person really will set that position up, hold it, and they don't give an inch, and they just keep pulling until they get through it. And they don't break form, and they don't, it's just one more interesting piece that's giving you like advice on your athlete and then what you might be able to do.
I love the fact that you've linked the dots of who's willing to keep themselves under tension and try and force your way through the mud, right? Like, because that time under
Yeah.
tension is gonna go through the
Oh
roof,
man. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? We've all got those
Yeah.
athletes, right? That like they're trying to grab and yank the bar, and if it doesn't move
Yeah.
like instantaneously, they kind of just like, oh, I can't do it. I was like, well, you
Yeah,
probably could have. Like, realistically
totally.
speaking, you probably could have. You just shat
Yeah,
yourself the first inch of the lift, right? And don't
yeah,
get me wrong,
totally,
it's scary as hell. You know,
totally.
you
Yeah.
put your hands on the bar, whether it's a deadlift, whether it's bloody clean or snatch, you put the hands on the bar, and that first half inch feels like shit and doesn't move. You're like,
Hmm.
oh, damn.
Am I
Like,
really gonna do this or not?
am I really going to do this? Exactly. Especially on the whole weightlifting thing, right? Like, it's like, I've got to get myself underneath this object
Yeah,
and I got to do it rapid, you know? So that little
yeah,
doubt comes into and the fear comes into the mind,
totally.
right?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, the more years that go by, the more you see it. You know, the athlete can say what they want to say about it sometimes, but you're like, I mean, you see it, you know the truth. You know who's got it in the basement and who doesn't.
Yeah. Sometimes you bitch out and that's okay. Like some days mentally
Yeah,
you're not
totally.
quite there.
Yeah, just say it. Yeah, totally. 100% happens.
It's just
Yeah.
like us, man. Sometimes you unrack a barbell for a heavy squat and you just rack it again. You're like, no, I'm all good. I'm not gonna go down today. It happens, man.
Yeah. 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 That's the thing. I mean, I mean, that plays into longevity too. I mean, as time goes on, you got to get smarter and smarter. You got to know when to, adjust your plan accordingly. I mean, we're pretty mechanical, so have every athlete will draw out a plan every time we max a barbell. It's not see how the last lift feels and then load whatever you
Oh
want
wow.
and keep loading. Yeah, we don't do that. So we'll take, in general with squat, bench, dead and variations, we'll do 7 lifts, single lifts, building from a very lightweight to a maximal weight. And the last 2 jumps are generally like about 5%. So we're not taking like time. We don't have a, 700-pound deadlifter who's, jumping by 15 pounds on their last deadlift. I mean, you're jumping by 30, 40 pounds, 50 pounds on that last lift because you can't have them tuck in tight. And you want to see the athlete start to like call the 8 ball, you know,
Mm,
like being able to say, this is what I can get to. Here's how I'm going to get there. And I mean, we do adjust plans along the way. If you're like, man, it's just not my day. I thought it was good. I'm on my 4th lift. I can see that this isn't going to go the way I want it to, and we'll scale back a plan. But I really like seeing that accountability for a lifter who's written out a plan. I mean, I've been traveling a ton lately. I just came back from Colorado a couple of days ago. Most sleep I've got last week's like 6 hours. Um, and keen to show up, keen to get back to lifting, and really had to temper my maxes on Monday and Wednesday because I mean travel for me, I know I've got to be really thoughtful about squatting and pulling. Just
mm.
hip flexors get tight and short with travel, and that's run me into trouble with like my SI. Um, and it takes a lot, but I mean with time that goes on, I mean you got to take some of the youth recovery and survival out of that and put it into the jar of knowledge so that you can come back and be like, you know what, like I'm capable of this on most Mondays. I'm going to pull it back by 50 pounds and still get my 7 single lifts up to this weight where I'm going to finish the day and not end up running into problems. Live to fight tomorrow.
Yeah, bro. You've got into the gym, you've shifted load, you've moved your body, and you've walked out injury free. That sounds like a big
Mm-hmm.
fucking win to me. You know, like it's age old thing, right? I know it sounds a
Yeah.
little cliche, but it's just moving dirt and digging holes. You know, I think about it more times than I care to
Yeah.
admit when it just comes to, oh God, my knees are a little sore, my back is locked up, I've been coaching all day, I'm on my feet, I'm stressed, I'm tired, whatever the fuck it is, and you just like, I just gotta move dirt. Whatever it is, it is. Once you warm up, you usually end up doing something pretty good
Yeah.
anyway. You know, it's like maybe you know, 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10 times, you're like, actually, I could probably have just taken a rest day today. But like the majority of times, you warm up, you feel a lot better. Yeah, you don't hit your peak,
Mm-hmm.
but who does?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, and the reality is too, I mean, sometimes you get to where you're moving big enough numbers. I mean, you can play for keeps on any given day, just a regular day in the gym. I
Oh
remember
yeah.
years ago, I used to be a wildland firefighter, and I did my
Wow.
like like professional chainsaw tests. So you go out for the day with a professional faller, cut a bunch of trees down, they assess you and you pass or you fail. And the guy who took me out was an old guy. And after we sort of reviewed the day, he said, son, if I can tell you one thing, it'd be that every time I really hurt myself, I kind of thought twice about it before it happened.
Mm.
And that always, I mean, it really was great advice. I mean, I think about that all the time. I mean, those times when you're like stepping to that edge on something and you're like, man, my knee has just been like not quite right. And I mean, as time goes on, the more times you kind of like, you got to know when to roll the dice on it, and when it's worth. If you know what you're playing for, you got to know when to roll the dice and when not to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times where, at a world level at the Olympics, that you might find that you're like, yep, here's where we're at. I'm gonna get one shot at this, and I'm going for it. But maybe on a idle Friday evening with your buddies in the gym isn't that time.
Checking that ego, man. But we're Neanderthalic men, it's like it's always, oh, but we could do like an extra 5 pounds. It's like, yeah, potentially, but
Yeah,
like what are the odds, man? What are the odds?
totally. Yep. And you get better and better at weighing in on it. And if you can, if sometimes you're like, you know what? Yep, there's there's always some inherent risk, and sometimes it is worth it. And sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, sometimes you just gotta try to do your best to keep your friends down.
Mm. A bet's a
And
bet,
other
right?
times you gotta know when you're like, they're gonna get the better of me today. Yeah, totally.
A
Yeah.
bet's a bet, bro. Sometimes you got to put the body on the line.
Yep. Common sense, common results.
I've not heard that one before, but I like it. Yeah, I think back to those times, man. Some of those times, those conversations I've had with myself of just like, Alex, should you really do this?
Yeah,
Your back's been a little funky all day, mate. I was like,
totally.
fuck it. I'm still getting under the bar. I'm a savage. They don't know me.
Yeah.
You get under and you're like, yeah, that's me out for a few weeks.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I've had my shoulder repaired. I've torn my Achilles off the bone.
Ooh.
The I've had a long list of injuries from lots of sports over 25 years, And and there's been times where I've been like, fuck it, I don't care. Like I was doing what I want to do, and
Yeah,
it is what it is. And there's been other times I was like, man, what a waste. Like
yeah.
that was stupid. Like I don't even care about that sport. I was just out there being dumb for now. I mean, there's so many sports that are fun, and you just got to weigh in on like, you know, is every single thing worth it, or is there some things where like, man, I don't really, I like that, it's fun, but I'm not going to do it because if it takes away from this other thing I really care about, then
Mm.
it's not my thing. Um, yeah, because there's some stuff like, I tore my oblique a bunch of years ago, and it was I was doing 6 rep deadlift at I think it was like 505 standing on a 2-inch block or something like that. So
Bloody hell.
deficit dead, 6 reps at 505, fell my oblique tear on like the third. And there's a
I said,
piece
fuck it.
where, yeah, fuck it. Yeah, I'm finishing. Like it wasn't even a piece where I considered anything else. I was just like, man, these next 3 are going to be real bad. And got through the following 3, got all shocky, got all like that cold sweat.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
people are talking to you, you can't totally hear them.
That's
But
the
there's
good
a
stuff,
part
man.
with that where I was just like, it just felt more important to me to be unwilling to quit than it did, uh, putting that bar down and stopping. And obviously that's
Yeah.
terrible advice, and I wouldn't recommend anyone ever do that. But there's also been other times where I dislocated my shoulder snowboarding, on my own time on a weekend when I was pro patrolling at a ski hill, just being somewhere where I had no business being. Like it was way over my skill level, and dislocated my shoulder and was like, what are you doing? Like, this is so
Mm.
stupid. Like, I care about this so little, and I chanced it and lost, and it's going to cost me, and it cost me a lot. It cost me a long time to get that shoulder to where, and I could even rack a back squat bar, and like, it's always had some effect on my bench press, and like those
Yeah.
sort of things were like, man, that's an injury in life that, I mean, it changed for me. It actually is, it's the long story of how I found CrossFit, and started down that path. It ended up here at all. So, I mean, overall, in the grand scheme,
Mm.
good news. Um, but as a decision, I mean, I would definitely take it back, you know, because it just was like something where I'm like, yeah, snowboarding's fun, but like, I mean, I didn't have to do that and no
Yeah.
one cared and it didn't pay off and it didn't win me awards or, you know, so sometimes good, sometimes not so good.
Let's be honest, some of the best coaches have been the dumbest athletes.
Yeah, I mean, or just like they learn the hard way. I mean, I always respect that with Louis. Like, well, the things that Louis went through. I mean, two broken backs. I mean, that guy
Yeah.
listed off his like, long list of injury. Man, I put my hand on that guy's knee, and that guy's knee feels like someone mixed a bunch of busted glass in with some like hair gel and then put it in a bag. You know, it's what is going on there. Nobody knows, but he'll tell you. I mean, at the time, and this is a bunch of years ago now, but he'd be like, "Yeah, it's pain free because of all this other stuff I do."
Yeah.
And his knowledge and his life experience and the sacrifices he uh, made it that so West Side and those other lifters did not go through those things, did not have those same problems. I mean, his the things that cost him, he was able to make sure he used himself to protect his own people, you
Yeah.
know. And so I can feel the effect of that. I mean, having had injuries, having had surgery, I mean, it gives you such a stronger appreciation for when other people are going through injuries or they're rehabbing surgery. Like, you know what, honestly, it's going to be okay. Like
Yeah.
if you're real smart, you work with good quality people. I mean, we have a whole team of practitioners who work with our athletes. um, and when you can put that stuff together, I mean, honestly, I've come out the other side of every injury, every surgery, and still got stronger, you
Mhm.
know.
I think a lot of people need to hear that, man. If I'm honest with you, we tend to get down in the dumps a little bit too much and bury our heads in the sand and be like, we're never going to be the same again, and I'm never going to be 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, yeah, if you go in with that attitude and not really do any PT afterwards, and you just kind of like, oh, I've had surgery, let's hit the gym again. You're like, we need to be smarter about it. Granted,
Yeah.
but you can surpass it. You are going to be okay. Going under the knife is not a sentence.
No, no, yeah, totally. Like, yeah, it's really cool. Like, I mean, yeah, my shoulder was my first real big injury, and I mean, it took years before I kind of got it to where it was like felt safe again, and I didn't think about it all the time,
Hmm.
or worry about it like every day. But what I learned from that, I was able to apply to all the little things along the way. And my Achilles was only maybe 6 or 7 years ago, um, and I mean, I tore it off the bone and had it repaired, and I think 3 months later, I was back to pulling 500 pounds. I
Yes.
was back over 600, like in less than 6 months. Feels great. I mean, I could do all the things now. I'm skipping, as you do sometimes. I'm able to do that sort of stuff, and I just have to like, I keep it in check. I get treatment on it. Like, I try to, keep it smooth and work the ankles and keep the feet healthy, and that stuff pays off.
Hmm.
But it was way less stressful. The whole process of my Achilles repair, I was like, I've got this. I've got good people working with me. I know I'll be fine.
Well, I got a question.
Yeah.
What are the 3 words you would tell your younger self?
What are the three words?
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh man, I'm still pretty young. What would I
I
mean,
see that gray, brother.
yeah, that's white. It is white.
I
It was
get
a
the same in
surprise.
the middle of my
Yeah.
mustache, man.
Oh man, when it grew in, I was like, that's different than you'd assume. Like, yeah, turns out I've got a little older. I don't feel it though. The three words I would tell my younger self. I mean, discipline really matters. And I feel like I knew it then and I still know it now, but having that reinforced, I don't think can be overemphasized. It's
Yeah.
like discipline is the it feels like that unlocks so many things. Like, you don't need motivation. It's fleeting. It always comes and goes. Like some days when people are like, oh, I just don't feel motivated to go to the gym. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't feel motivated to eat broccoli, but I still make it happen. like because you can see like, if this is what I should be doing. And if you have that discipline, that is a big piece. So, discipline would be a thing that I feel like is really important. I mean, value of culture, that culture is such a huge element, like that, from your training partners to the not just your training partners, but the gym and the experience of that, the people you spend your time in life with. Like, I mean, you've really got to think about that value. And I think I've been very lucky in life, that I've most I've almost constantly be surrounded by really excellent people. Like, I was very lucky with Wildland Fire to work with an amazing group of people there who, shaped and guided me in life. And um, I always feel very fortunate to have someone who is some kind of mentor, or someone I look up to. I mean, Adam Knifer, now being able to work with him, working with Justin, I just find him such a, he's so positive all the time, and such a great outlook, and I mean, hard worker. I mean, he's
Mm.
that the amount of time that guy has spent thinking about all the little details piece, and then he's go out, he'll try something on his own, and test, like, if we suspect it's going to be something in the lake, then we're renting, he's off to rent a kayak and go paddle around in the lake at Madison just to see what it looks like, like, and so that, like, culture and community are such big pieces. Like, I mean, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's discipline, culture, community.
I love it. Thank
Yeah,
you,
man.
brother.
Yeah, cheers, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for
Mate,
reaching out.
honestly, this has been more than an honor and a fucking privilege, mate. Like
Ah, cheers. Nah, fuck. Thanks for calling. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff. It's super fun. I love being asked questions and being able to talk and meet new people. And yeah, appreciate it. I actually listened to a bunch of your episodes and was like, oh, this is great. So there's been
thank you,
good
man.
takeaways from listening to other episodes. So good job for you. Great work on what you're up to. And yeah, stoked.
Thank you, brother. It's all the people that come on. I'm just a crazy northern guy that talks too much shit and swears way too much, but I don't really give a fuck anyway. Who cares? But I'm gonna have to pop in. I'm gonna have to pop into the gym, man. My missus is
Yeah, man.
Canadian, so I mean
Oh yeah, shit. Where's she
she's
from?
she's East Coast though. She's Ottawa.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Cool.
But
Yeah,
mate,
very cool.
being in the country is a lot closer than being out of the country. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to stop by.
Yeah, yeah, man. Absolutely. Anytime. Yeah, please
Ah, man.
do.
I'll let you know.
Cool.
Thank you, brother. Have a great
Cheers,
day,
man.
man.
Thank you.
Get
Yeah,
some
you
sleep.
too. Yeah, totally.
My man. See you soon.
Gotcha.
Bye, everybody.